Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to episode 164 of the Arc Junkies Podcast. I have a great episode for you today. I'm sitting down chatting with Nick Bezates, the one-man welding crew out of Beaver Creek, Oregon. Nick has a very diverse background when it comes to welding, fabrication, and general construction. This man is nonstop. Whether he's out in the field doing installs, hot taps, or repairs, or he's back in his shop doing custom fabrication or CNC work to keep the jobs in the field rolling. I'm sure you all get a lot out of this episode. Before we get into it, a quick word from the supporters of the show. I get a lot of questions from listeners about recommending welding equipment, and it all boils down to what do you want to do with the equipment and where are you going to be running it. Now, most of the people are just starting out doing side work or they're just trying to build up their skill set. But they want a good machine that's reliable and they don't want to break the bank to get it. But they also don't want something that's bottom of the barrel and available at your local bargain price tool store. If you find yourself in a similar situation, stop by and check out my buddies over at EverlastWelders.com. They have a machine to fit every skill level and budget. I'm currently running Everlast myself right now, and I couldn't be happier. All the work that comes through my side business gets welded on by one of two machines, either the 255 EXT or my Cyclone 200E. Neither of these machines have let me down. They're super simple to set up and operate. Head on over to Everlast Welders right now and check out their machines today. Make sure to use code word Arc Junkies in the comments section, and you'll get that free Nova foot pedal and TIG torch upgrade with the purchase of any machine that comes with a stock foot pedal. I also want to tell you about my good friends over at Rockmount Research and Alloys. I know I've told you guys about all their amazing welding rods and wires for maintenance welding and repair work, and maybe that doesn't apply to you in your type of work and what you have going on in your shop. But I know you're all out there grinding and drilling at some point, right? That's like 80% of what we do as welders and fabricators is prep for welding. So check out rockmountwelding.com and click on the Our Products tab and scroll down to the abrasives and metalworking section. They have a full section of chop saw blades, burr bits, drill bits, and abrasives. I've been using their grinding and cutoff wheels as well as their 2-inch sanding pads, and these things are tough. You'll definitely get your money's worth with these products. They cost a bit more than the stuff you're going to find over the big box store, but let's face it, you get what you pay for. Get the job done right the first time with Rockmount and stop messing around with discounted abrasives and bits. Be sure to give them a follow on Instagram as well, at Rockmount Welding, and tell them the Arc Junkie sent you. We're also brought to you by Outlaw Leather. They make some of the coolest custom hoods in the industry. Whether you want to sport your favorite sports team, a family crest, military service, whatever, Outlaw can put your favorite logo on a custom hood. Check out all their cool custom leather pieces to include arm pads, bolt bags, hoods, scabbard holders, and more at outlawleatherusa.com. Then use Arc Junkies at checkout and get 15% off any of their custom leather pieces. All right, folks, let's go ahead and get into the episode. Fire up your machine, drop your hood, and turn me up 5.
You're listening to the Arc Junkies Podcast. Helping you make every weld better than your last with each episode. And now your host, Jason Becker.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, joining me today is Nick Bezates out of Central Oregon?
Portland area.
Okay. I haven't been up to Oregon yet. I've always wanted to go up to Midwest. Like, I mean, just from what I see on like TV and movies and stuff, it just looks beautiful, like an amazing territory.
Yeah, Oregon's a beautiful state. Come in the summertime.
That's what I've heard.
It is
I seen your picture that you posted the other day, and like all your truck's frozen, your buggy's frozen, even the fire extinguishers just covered in ice. The zip tie, I mean, you know, God bless the zip tie. He was hanging on for dear life there, but like everything was frozen.
Yeah, we got hit with a pretty good ice storm here a couple of weeks ago.
Is that pretty normal, like in your winters, or is that like kind of freak of nature, kind of like what Texas was going through?
Yeah, not ice storms usually. I mean, we might get 1 or 2 winter storms a year where we'll get a few inches of snow. Portland's pretty low. We're only elevation about 200. So for us to get snow is pretty uncommon. A lot of cold rain, you know, all winter long, but actual ice and snow is not super common here.
Gotcha. So tell me about, I always find it interesting, you know, people, you know, they say, go to school if you want to learn welding, or on the job training, or fake it till you make it. And I just kind of wanted to get your take on it because I know that you went to school. Do you have any regrets or doubts about your decision of going through welding school?
I would say that I don't have any regrets about mine whatsoever. I was fortunate enough to have an amazing instructor that was, he was a millwright. So he did a little bit of everything, pipe and structural and all kind of hydraulics. I mean, you name it. And Bob was, he was probably, aside from my dad, he was probably one of the most influential mentors that I had, making my way into the trades and working with my hands, learning welding and everything else, because he was, he took me under his wing and he was very competent and very able to teach in a really good way that you could learn. So the hard part's going to be finding that guy.
Yeah.
But I would say that school for me was definitely a really good path.
I think that's a huge thing. And Nate Bowman and I have been talking about it for a while, is the instructors at the schools. And like, I won't get on my soapbox again, but I mean, just like you said, finding the right instructor, because there's a lot of people that are holding that position that really don't deserve to be there. But then you have a lot of people that they just take it and they run with it. And it's like, okay, I've got a standard set curriculum. That's the bare minimum that I have to teach. But let me show you guys and gals, let me show you some of this stuff too. Like in addition to the curriculum, here's what I learned in my experience. Here's some stuff that I did out on the job. And like, you start incorporating artwork and fabrication and all that stuff, and just kind of opening that door up a little bit and kind of showing them a little bit more about welding.
Yeah. And that was Bob too. I mean, he took and, when he saw potential there, or I had something down, that I was pretty good at, he'd be like, okay, here, take this project and go tack it under the table. And you got to weld in the dark with a mirror now. And, at the time you're like, oh man, that kind of sucks, and so you go do it. But looking back, I mean, those are the things that push you to be better.
Yeah.
So, I'm really grateful for the ability to be able to do some of that stuff when I was learning.
Right. I've got pictures of some of my students doing exactly the same thing. I'd hang off the arm in their booth, hang like a 3 or 4 foot extension, and have them like lay down on the ground, underneath their welding table, upside down, non-dominant hand, trying to do overhead. And they're like, man, that's hard. And it's like, okay, that's pretty much what it's going to be like. If you want to get into structural steel ironwork, maintenance welding, anything like that, you're not going to be on a nice, pristine, clean bench. You got to get uncomfortable. You got to start welding with that non-dominant hand and think outside the box a little bit, especially once they start getting good and once they start getting cocky. You're like, okay, it's not always going to be this easy, bud. Come here, let me show you some other stuff.
Kind of beat you back there a little bit.
Yeah, you gotta take them back down, humble them a little bit. But no, I think it's all in the instructor and how much they want to put in and do their job and kind of go above and beyond what the minimum requirements are.
Absolutely.
So
I agree.
You got a degree in welding, right?
Yeah. I got a 2-year degree in welding processes from Lane Community College. And then even when I was going to my additional school, I stayed on and student taught, nights and weekends. And when I could carve out the spare time, I'd go back and help Bob out. And a lot of it was just sharing coupons and helping kids with their settings and, a few demos here and there. But I think that there was just as much value in learning or in teaching and learning how to teach.
Yeah.
As there was in learning how to weld.
Mm-hmm. So what did you do once you got out of school?
When I was done, simultaneously while I was going to Lane, I was also taking schooling for, I started at the University of Oregon and I majored in business there and realized pretty quickly that business wasn't going to be my route. So at least not a major in it. And so I ended up transferring up to Oregon State. I did a construction engineering management degree from there.
Okay. And so how'd you get into like the business that you're running today? Because you own your own company. I mean, did you go off and start working for other companies first, kind of get a feel for the work and what needed to be done and kind of find your niche and take off from there?
Yeah. So I grew up in a construction family. So Bezates Construction's actually been around since about 1982. My dad started it.
That's 38. So it's 38 years old now.
Yes.
I only know that because I was born in 82.
Yeah. He started the same year I was born too.
Oh, nice.
So, yeah. I grew up in it, I was around it all the time, primarily heavy civil underground, stuff like that. I never really figured welding was going to be a path I would take, but I always had an interest in it. So, when the opportunity came up to go take some classes and stuff, I jumped on it and figured, hey, it's always going to be something really good to know how to do. And I ended up taking a really big liking to it and kind of went from there. And then when I went and got my degree from Oregon State and then worked for another contractor for, almost 10 years, I worked for them while I was going to Oregon State, paying my way through school, nights and weekends and stuff, doing everything from driving truck to running rotomill and excavator and you name it. So did that, worked for them for a while. And then Dad had semi-retired. He worked for the same company as well. And then, so we worked together a lot in that capacity. And then he semi-retired, or we fired things back up after we kind of had a falling out with them. And welding was presented as an option to go. I had a couple companies call me and need some welding done. And I hadn't really picked that as my path, but I threw everything in my truck and kind of took off, and just one job turned into another job, and just kind of snowballed from there. So I stuck with it.
It's crazy how it has that effect.
Yes.
As far as like word of mouth travels quick, and just the fact of doing a good job and being reliable, your name will spread like wildfire. And there's just so many people out there that need a good welder. Like when I first fired my business up, like while I was teaching, because like I was part-time instructor, wasn't making enough money. So I was like, well, let me like just start doing odd jobs and stuff like that. So I got on with one apartment complex. That contractor knew somebody else that needed a welder. They knew somebody else that needed a welder. And it was just like, I got too big too quick. Like, yeah, I couldn't feed that beast that I was creating. I was going to have to start hiring other people. And it wasn't really in the cards for me because I love teaching so much. And I didn't want to lose that. Like I knew if I was to go, work full time, with my own business, I wouldn't be able to teach anymore. And for some reason, there's just something about teaching welding that just I gravitated towards like nothing else.
Yeah.
But like with anybody that wants, if you have the basic essentials in the back of your truck, or like throw in the back of your car, or whatever, welding machine. I had a little Lincoln 210 MP. And a 5,000 watt generator and an extension cord, a grinder, and a portaband. And like you can get a lot done with that.
You get a ton of work done with that. You get a
ton of work done. You get the spool gun attachment on there. Man, I was doing like fence posts and gate repairs for swimming pools and stuff like that because it's all aluminum work. Yep. You'd be surprised how many people just crash right into the front of a gate inside of an apartment complex. I mean, that's like a daily occurrence. And so they'll call you all hours of the day to come out there and fix that stuff. And you can make a lot of money real quick.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it, like you said, it snowballs. I mean, if you're the guy that they can call and will show up and you're dependable, I mean, I think that's half the battle anymore.
Yeah. Just being there when you say you're going to be there.
Yep.
Yeah. And it'll spread like wildfire. I mean, you'll just start getting random phone calls. Hey, so, I got your name from so-and-so. I got a job. Okay. Can you send me a picture? Yeah. That's within my wheelhouse. I can get you in on like Tuesday at 3:00. All right. Awesome. Right. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I get tons of those. That's just, hey, I work with so-and-so. He recommended you. I got this little job that needs to be done. And then it just stacks up from there.
Yeah. Just building a reputation. So what was your next thing? I mean, after you started doing like the small jobs with welding, at what point did you know that, hey, this is actually, there's a future and I can actually do something with this?
Well, the first one was like 7,000 feet of 24-inch, water line. So I was out there working with a contractor that I had worked with a lot in, other capacities doing heavy civil stuff. So I was out there just welding for them. And then it was, oh, hey, we got this reservoir project too that's going on that, we could use some help on. So I went up there and that was a 3-year-long project off and on doing seismic upgrades and piping. And, and then it just kind of blew up from there. I started getting into the hot taps, started doing, a lot more structural, and it just, one thing led to another.
So I've noticed like you do like a lot of piping and stuff as like that's kind of like your bread and butter, right?
For the most part, yeah. I do a lot of modifications. I don't do so much production stuff, really, but a lot of modifications, smaller mechanical jobs for contractors, hot taps, line stop welding, a lot of that. And then dabble in some structural and miscellaneous stuff with that.
Okay. It looks like a lot of your stuff is like just out in the middle of nowhere.
Some of it is, yeah.
Like I see your pictures on Instagram, and it's like you're out in the middle of the woods, and for some reason there's like pipe or a tower or something that you're working on out there. Is that that's pretty much the root of it all?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of stuff that's downtown, inside of buildings and that too, but there's also quite a bit of it that is like this summer I went up and did a job in the Mount Hood National Forest, build a pipe bridge in the middle of we had to go over the top of a creek with a pipe. And so they brought in all this 42-inch heavy wall casing, and I basically had to build this thing out in the middle of the forest. So yeah, that one was absolutely in the middle of nowhere.
And is this all like for water lines or?
Primarily, yeah,
okay.
Pretty much water lines. I do a little bit of natural gas stuff with hot taps, but that's mostly like service side. So inside of buildings, pretty low pressure.
Okay. And then I've noticed you get some really cool toys. You're like the James Bond of welding. Is when I look through your stuff on Instagram. Like, tell me about this little spider crane that you have, because that's sick, man. I'd never seen anything like that before. Nate was telling me about it, Nate Bowman. And that's the first time that I found you. I went and looked at that picture, and I was like, what is this little critter here?
Yeah. So the spider crane was it was a purchase years ago. And it was kind of a necessity thing for some of the jobs I do working around the shop. And then also there was like hardly any of them here in the Northwest. So it kind of paved its own way for a little bit of work there. But yeah, it's pretty awesome. It's 24 inches wide. It'll walk right through a man door. It can turn sideways in a 7-foot wide hallway and walk through a door. It's got a man basket for the end of it, so I can use it as a man lift.
Really?
Yeah.
I didn't know that you could use it as a man lift. That's pretty neat.
Yeah, it pins on the end of the boom.
Yeah, because I seen you use that like quite a bit for some of the pipes and stuff that you're working on, or attaching flanges and everything. Because I mean, are you working solo, or do you have a team of guys that are going out there with you?
Nope, just me.
That's what I was gonna say. It looks a lot of like it's just you and the crane kind of getting things done out there in the middle of nowhere.
Absolutely, yeah.
And then you got like your track buggy. I mean, is that something you use quite a bit to get to some of these off the wall places, like especially up on the side of a mountain where it's not really feasible to take a truck up to?
Yeah, I mean, I use it quite a bit. And it's hit or miss, off and on stuff, but it's been kind of a slow build out of necessity over the years. I used to just rent a side-by-side, and I'd pile all my stuff in it for a job. Sorry. When I had to do like some of the pipeline stuff, there's no way you're going to get your truck in there anywhere close to it. And I don't really feel like stringing out 600-700 feet of leads. So I'll get that thing all loaded up and then drive it in there. And the tracks ended up being kind of a necessity thing too, because I was always getting it stuck on the job. If you'd use just it with its regular tires on it, the Kubotas are not exactly the most articulate of vehicles to drive around. So yeah, you'd end up getting stuck. So I went ahead and bit the bullet on a set of tracks for it and got it all outfitted. And so, yeah, I've had it out on some jobs here lately, and I got one more coming up here at the end of the month for it. So
yeah, I see that thing would definitely pay for itself between, instead of having to rent one all the time. And, that's going to be a pain in the ass. It's more of an asset now because you've got access 24/7.
Right.
Yeah.
It pretty much has a welder parked on it all the time. I got reels and stuff. And so I've got one of my air packs on it right now. And so I can run plasma. I can go do mechanical stuff with air impact fittings and stuff. If I have to, it's pretty handy. It's really versatile unit.
Right. And what's so most of the stuff that you're doing out in the field and stuff, are you running a lot of flux core or stick welding or a mix of both?
Definitely a mix of both. Yeah. All my hot taps, I stick weld. Any of the bigger production pipe, if it's 1/4 inch or thicker, I like to run an inner shield on it because I don't like hassling with gas. Dual shield's a lot more user friendly, but I like to run inner shield just because I don't like having to cart tanks around.
Tote a bottle with you.
Yeah, everything else. Yeah, I'd say there's a pretty good mix of both, to be honest with you.
Okay. And then you said you were doing some seismic stuff. What wire are you using for that? All inner shield with that also?
Usually, yeah, unless it's like indoors, if I got good shelter to where I'm not fighting the wind, I'll use dual shield on a lot of that stuff.
I've noticed a lot more people are really hesitant for some reason to get into running flux core, be it self-shielded or, or outer shield or inner shield. And I don't understand the hang up. Do you find it easier to use?
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely a learning curve to it. There's a lot of flux with inner shield, so you need to get used to welding with that. But I feel like once you dial in some settings and you kind of get used to that learning curve, I think it runs great. I really enjoy it.
Yeah, and that's I can't understand because I've talked to several contractors and stuff about why just go ahead and try switching over to flux cord, and they're really apprehensive to do it. And the cool thing is I've got one of my students that I just put him out to work in December, and he's working for this company, and he's like, hey, you guys have the suitcase over here, and you've got, I think they're using NR, like they had a spool of NR 232 or something like that. He's like, why don't we just use this? It'll speed up, all the welding time. Cause I mean, they're doing like a lot of welding, and the guy's like, well, nobody knows how to use it. It's more of a pain in the ass than it's worth. And he's like, you mind if I drag it out and set it up? And he's like, have at it, kid.
Yeah. Knock yourself out.
Yeah. He gets it set up in like 20 minutes, man. Next thing you know, he's blowing by everybody. So like they're going to invest in a couple more suitcases and then have him teach everybody else how to do it. So I thought that was pretty cool. He was all excited and shooting me text messages and stuff and showing me pictures of his welds. And I was like, see, that's what we need is, I think the education aspect is missing from, a lot of the stuff that people are doing out in the field. It's like there's new technology available. When I say new, it's like we've made some developments in the past 20 to 30 years. You don't have to stick weld everything that you do.
Yeah. And being able to have the knowledge base of the processes to coin it with what you're doing and be like, no, man, I mean, this would be a lot faster if we did use some wire on it. If we did go with this, or no, wire's not a good application, or it's not good for this application here. Having that knowledge is critical too.
Yeah. And you're doing tank repairs also with this stuff?
But the tanks that I've been doing, I'm stick welding most of those just because I don't want to drag a feeder all the way to the top of the tank.
Right. Yeah, I wonder what you could put something up top and then run a pulley off the side of it and just kind of yoke it up that way and lock it in place.
Yeah, we've got one of those big scaffolding pulleys to do it, but I don't know. I usually set up a generator and then I'll run my 220 cord all the way to the top, and I'll run off of an inverter up at the top. And then that way also I can run off run my plasma at the top so that I have one cord and I can run two different machines up there for cutting holes or modifying anything. And then also welding.
Okay. So you're doing plasma cutting out there as well?
Yeah. I'll take plasma all the way to the top there and run an air hose up and plasma cut everything up there.
Okay. You got to do like arc gouging and stuff like that too on some of the stuff you're running?
Not always. A lot of if I do heavy equipment, I get a lot more gouging in heavy equipment type stuff than with any of the tank repairs.
Okay, so you're doing heavy equipment also. So I mean, you're like all over the place between working on
aluminum,
tanks and
stainless,
and structural, and you get a kind of mix of everything.
Yeah, it's the spice of life, right? You gotta have some variety.
And you stay pretty busy with it too. I mean, like, are you working year round for the most part?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I usually don't have time off unless I pick it.
And that doesn't happen too often?
No. I mean, I try and bump, some time out for kids' spring break and Christmas time and stuff like that.
Yeah.
A little bit in the summer. But yeah, I tend to stay pretty packed most of the year.
Okay. And then tell me about that miller that you're running now, because I noticed you've got the wireless remote. That's something that I haven't had a chance to mess around with. Yeah.
So I do product development for them. They sent that to me like November of 2019, I think. So I ran it for probably 7 or 8 months before it came out, maybe a little bit longer. But it's a game changer. It really is. When you're doing stuff, if you're away from your engine drive at all and you need to change settings, I mean, it's an absolute game changer. Even with wire, you can dial in all of your voltage and inductance. If you don't have arc reach on your feeders, you can dial everything in with it, and right at the point of your work.
Really?
Yeah, it's awesome.
That's pretty neat. So is that something kind of built into your engine drive, or is that like something you can do as like an add-on?
Yeah, no, it's built into the newer engine drives, the brain. I don't know the actual ins and outs of it, but it comes on the newer engine drives.
Okay. Is that on Trailblazer and the Bobcat, or just the Trailblazer?
Bobcats have a remote start stop, but they don't have the settings stuff. And then I believe they do, at least. But then the new Trailblazers and all the big blues have the wireless remote.
Okay. And then you can swap, or like you said, you can do volts, amps, and inductance right there on the remote keypad.
Change all your processes. So if you want to go from gouge to stick to TIG, can change everything right on the remote. It's got pre-programmed. It's got four or five programs that you can program into it. So say you're running like a 332 6010 route, and then you want to bump up to 332 7018 for a fill pass. You can have those programmed in as two separate programs. So when you press the button, it switches over to your 7018 settings. And then if you want to bump up to 8-inch 7018, you can hit a button again and it'll change. So one press of a button, it'll switch through all your different rods or whatever you want to use.
Oh, so you got like mode 1 is this, mode 2 is this. You got like little presets and stuff built into it. You use that quite frequently, I would imagine.
A lot, yeah. Yeah, I'll have like, my different, mostly for mine would be like different diameter rods when I'm doing different things. And then I can just hit a button and shift over to it, and I'm off and running. That's
got to be a lot cheaper than having an apprentice, because I remember when I first started, when I got into ironworking, that was kind of like my job. Hey, turn me up 5. You got to like run down, climb down a ladder, run all the way to the back of the truck, start messing with the adjustments and everything. So that's got to save a lot of time, and time is money. So I could definitely see that'd be a worthwhile investment doing that.
Oh, 100%. If you do field work, absolutely.
Yeah. And then just like, I've been in a lot of spots where like you get everything into place. It's all clamped up and you're getting ready to do a tack. You flip your hood down and you're tapping on it and you're like, oh, damn, ground clamp. And then you put the ground clamp on and nope, shit, I forgot to turn the machine on. Then you break everything back down and go back down in the man lift and fire the machine up. Yeah, no, I could definitely see that being worth it. Just for having the on and off function, I think, that'd be awesome.
Yeah, that's huge.
And then what's the range on it?
I haven't peeked it out yet. I mean, it goes further than I own leads. So,
really?
Obviously if you get inside a tank or inside a vault, you're going to lose some reception in there. But, you can walk away from the rig 400 or 500 feet and fire it up. No sweat.
Okay. Now that's pretty slick, man. And they're making so many different like advancements in welding. It's just ridiculous. There's all kinds of new stuff coming out every day with different technology and modes of metal transfers and waveforms and wireless technology. I'm still waiting for the Bluetooth ground clamp or the Wi-Fi ground clamp. Once they come out with that, man, I think that'll be a game changer for sure.
Yeah. I mean, now you got battery powered welders running around, and
I seen that. Fronius has got one, the little battery powered. I guess you can run up to 12 8-inch diameter 7018 rods off one charge.
Crazy.
And it's like the trans TIG pocket. So I think like I could see that being very beneficial, especially for what I do, because I do like a lot of restaurant repairs.
Small stuff.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And it's like a lot of times, like they don't have the right outlet for your machine and stuff. So like a lot of times you're like, bring the generator in, then, roll out all the cord just to fire up the inverter. Or, if you can get in there and run off 110 power. But I mean, still you're dragging it. I mean, most inverters are 30, 40 pounds. I mean, it's still pretty light, but I mean, it's a lot of stuff you got to like drag in there. But if you could like just throw your welding machine on your back, like it's a side satchel or whatever, and just go in there and do the work without having to deal with all the, power and all that other stuff. I think that'd be really beneficial. And then even for you, because it has the stick option, you know, you could like drag it up there and make a quick repair, you know, and throw it behind the seat in your truck.
For sure. Yeah. Yeah. I keep my little Miller inverter with me all the time. I mean, I'll usually have two with me. I'll have my Dynasty with me so I can do AC aluminum repairs, you know, on the fly too, if I have to. And then I'll have one of my smaller like Max Stars with me for any of that stuff. Like you said, it's super light. You just take it in and fire it up off of 110 or whatever.
Yeah. Good. And that seems to be like the biggest pain in the ass whenever you go to do something is the setup time. Like it doesn't matter if you're going to go weld 1 inch or you're going to weld, you know, 30 inches, you've got the same amount of setup time. And that's always like, you spend a lot of time getting everything set, running leads, you know, finding a power source, getting everything fired up, making sure, you know, especially if you're doing TIG, okay, now you got to get collet bodies and gas lens and cups and now bottle and, you know, all the stuff that goes with it. Like setup time, you know, for field work is like, that's the biggest. So any way you can like trim down, have that stuff set up and ready to go where you can just pull up and rock and roll, you can pick up a lot more work that way.
I try and get everything like, if all my TIG stuff for the field, I've got like the little Pelican tackle boxes that you can just flip open and they hold everything. It's got your TIG torch. It's got a little tungsten grinder. It's got your extra tungsten, like all of that stuff's all in one package. So when you know you're going out, you just grab that and you're set. You got everything you need.
Grab the box and that you just got to make sure that you keep replenishing anything that you're getting rid of in between jobs and stuff.
Yeah.
I started setting up I got into the Milwaukee pack out craze because they make some really cool stuff. So I'm still debating on how I'm going to set that up. I just picked it up last week. It was on sale at Home Depot and I couldn't pass it up. And I'm still debating how I want to set that one up. If I want to set it up for doing side jobs and stuff or just like general maintenance or what. But yeah, I could see where it'd be, you know, a hell of an investment in time to be able to like pack in all your tools in one shot. I mean, you could throw a welding machine on top of that and like, boom, you're ready to go.
Yep, absolutely.
So what do you have? What do you have planned coming up? I mean, do you have thoughts on expanding? How long have you been running the welding side of Bezates Construction?
We've been going about 10 years roughly. I don't really want to expand and hiring people, at least not right now while the kids are young. I got 3 little boys, so I like being able to, you know, take my time and hang out with them and be busy when I'm busy and be off when I'm off and not have to worry about employees and other families and mouths to feed and, you know, drumming up enough work. You know, the way it is right now, if work slows down, you know, I don't have to be out beating the bushes trying to find a whole bunch of stuff. I'm pretty self-sufficient and I can just kind of lay back and hang out and wait for more work to pop up if it does. So
now, do you do shop work as well?
Yeah. Okay. I've got a full shop here, CNC plasma table, and a little bit of everything in it. So I do some shop fab work. It just, everything ends up being in the field. That's kind of what I'm known for. So that's what I end up getting the calls for. But I do have quite a bit of stuff going on here at the shop. Like I got a dump trailer out, a pup dump truck trailer that I'm repairing right now, some casing, some different stuff. I, rebuild, do aluminum repairs and all that. So.
Okay. How do you stay organized with all this stuff, especially if you're doing shop work and field work? I mean, how do you kind of schedule yourself to where you're not overextending and you can meet the client deadlines and make sure that you can be there when you say you can?
I pretty much just use a paper written calendar. I've actually gotten I just upgraded. I'm pretty high tech now here in the office. I got a whiteboard calendar.
Nice.
So I can write all that stuff in, and I've pretty much got it, like a 2-month look ahead, and I just write in the days and what's going on. And I'll have kind of a wait list on the side, and I can put dates next to, okay, this contractor wants something here, but there's a scheduling conflict, so we can get him here or here. And, just kind of then everything can fall into place as things open up or they don't, or as I get stuff done. It's pretty easy to just cross it off the list. And
yeah, I think that's one of the cheapest, most valuable things you can have for your small business is a whiteboard. Or a calendar style whiteboard. I think I picked one up on Amazon for like $14 when I started the podcast, just because I wanted to have a 1 month look ahead, because one of the things I wanted to make sure is I said I was going to put an episode out every Monday. So I want to make sure I can hit every Monday. So I've got all the dates that I'm going to do my recordings, what day that's going to be released, and like all the other information is in there. If a slot comes up, I usually have like an alternate on standby, because like if I was to schedule a podcast, like last week I was scheduling one and I had to reschedule it 4 times, and like I was running out of time, and so like I always like to have a plan B set up to where I can still put an episode out. So I imagine you have something similar to where, okay, there's a dead spot here, I can pick up one of these people that are on the wait list and knock that out, something that I can take care of in the shop or something.
For sure. Yeah. And I always have back burner jobs here in the shop too that aren't schedule critical, but can be kind of done whenever, So those are definitely, when it's pouring down rain and everything gets called off or something gets canceled, or inevitably a contractor, you'll start out on Monday with the whole week packed. And by Monday afternoon, everything might have canceled because something went wrong on every single job. It just kind of swings that way sometimes. So I definitely keep at least a few projects here at the shop that are kind of back burners.
Okay. Now, since you have a CNC machine, I mean, are you running like production work for anybody, like in your spare time, like cutting out gussets or plates or anything?
I probably should market it a little bit more and push that. But honestly, it's a lot of what I end up doing with it is like quick turnaround stuff for jobs that I'm on.
Okay.
Perfect example is the tank that I just worked on. They've misplaced some parts or forgot to put them in the order, and they were like some reinforcing washers that needed to get welded down to the top of the tank while I was up there welding all the rest of the stuff. And they had some 1/4 inch plate there that they had ordered for some other stuff that they didn't end up using. So I brought it home. I knocked out 18 of those overnight and I installed them the next day, so it keeps the contractor on schedule, and it's super valuable for me to be able to have and do that.
And then you're going to be the guy they call again, because you not only performed the original, what was agreed upon in the contract, but you kind of saved their ass and kept them from having to shift their schedule to the right even further.
Yeah. Yeah. If you can consistently be the guy that makes things happen, then they're going to call you back.
Yeah, I think that just having access to a CNC plasma cutter is like a huge asset. I mean, I know that it's going to cost a lot up front, but it's going to pay for itself pretty quick, because if you have to, like when I was doing my mobile business, I didn't have access to a lot of shop equipment. So I would have to sub a lot of that stuff out, like stair stringers and stuff.
Yeah.
Or like, just the repair pans. Like I used to do a lot of pan repairs. I could do it myself, but it was more expensive for me to go buy the sheet, bring it to the shop, shear it up, get it all bent up. So I would subcontract a lot of that work. But if I had access to that equipment on my own, that's something I could be doing in the evenings once I got home from work, is preparing the stuff to go out for that weekend.
Absolutely. And there's a balance there too of knowing what's worth your time to take on and do, and then what is worth having somebody else cut out, having somebody else form up for you, having somebody else get all these parts ready so it's just ready for you to weld. So, that's definitely a delicate balance in the business model too.
All right, we're going to go ahead and take a quick commercial break. This segment of the show is brought to you by AHP Welders. If welding is your hobby, or you just need a machine to do some odd jobs, or you just want to practice around the house and you want to do it for under $1,000, swing by ahpwelds.com and find the machine that's right for you. You can use Arc Junkies in the comment section at checkout to get that free Nova foot pedal and TIG torch with the purchase of any machine that comes with a stock foot pedal. This segment is also brought to you by StronghandTools.com. Quit fighting your work and make fabricating and shop life easier today with the help of some of the cool stuff over at Strong Hand Tools. Whether you need a new fabrication table, bottle handlers, torch holders, or fixturing accessories, Stronghand has it all. Head over to stronghandtools.com/Arc Junkies and see how they can help you increase your speed and accuracy in your shop life in general. Let's get back into the show. So do you ever get so far, like, busy with work and stuff that you have to sub something out to another contractor? Or like, do you have like a small crew of people you can call on and be like, hey, I'm doing this job. It's I got the bid on it, but it's going to be a little bit more work than I'm able to handle. You can bring your rig out and we can kind of team up on it.
Yeah. No, I've got some guys that I work with, and primarily Newberg Steel. I do a lot of stuff with them. I'll go weld for them and help them out. And then they've got their guys that I can call and they can come out and help do field installs and stuff like that. They just helped me out with a bunch of railing out at the park job that I was working on that the way the schedule pushed around, I didn't have time to be out there physically doing it myself. So they came out and knocked that stuff out, and they did a fantastic job.
Nice. I like the fact that you're so versatile with everything that you do. You haven't pigeonholed yourself into like one process of welding or, one type of work. It's very diversified. And I think that's where a lot of people, they get hung up, especially with, the type of work that they're doing. They limit themselves to one process or one particular area of work.
Yeah.
So just the fact that you're as diversified as you are, you can be welding on pipe one day, you could be putting up, stairs or handrails the next day, or doing structural here, working on stuff in your shop. I mean, you've kind of set your business up, especially for one man, you've set it up for success. So no matter if you do get an ice storm, you still have work in the shop. If there's a rain out, you can do something in the shop. If, a structural job comes up, you can, grab your rig and you can go out there and do that. So I think the biggest thing for people to take away and understand is just diversify. If there's a process you don't know or understand, do some research. A lot of the welding machines are multi-process. You can practice in your garage now. So if you're not good with flux core, I mean, just switch your leads over, grab you a spool, and just start practicing. Watch some videos, maybe take a night class or something like that. But I mean, diversifying is huge. And I know a lot of people freak out, especially pipe welders, when that area of work dries up. Once I guess the cost of a barrel of oil drops below a specific spot, they just shut everything down overnight. And then you got a lot of people that they don't have work because they went to school for pipe welding. They bought all the tools for pipe welding. That's what they know is pipe welding. And now there's no pipe welding jobs. Like, what do you get into?
Right.
So, I mean, you pigeonholed yourself into one area, and now there's you were making some really good money, but now all of a sudden that work's not there. So what are you going to do?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I agree 100%. And I had some lulls early on where I was a little more focused on maybe one thing or another. And I had some lulls, and then these other opportunities would present themselves, like stainless, say, like you're going from welding, 80-inch pipe, carbon steel, and then you go to a stainless job. And it's like, if you can't make that jump, then you might be sitting at home. But if you're willing to take that risk and be like, I'll put in the time to practice and learn, go get the certs if I need to get the certs, do what the things I need to do to make that happen, then you will have a lot better chance of staying busy.
Mm-hmm. So did you learn the majority of your fabrication and stuff and, how to do layouts and all that? Did you learn a lot of that in school with Bob?
There was a lot of that there, and then a lot of just trial by fire in the field and screwing stuff up. And, that's a good way to learn too.
Yeah. I always say I learn more from my mistakes than I do from getting it right the first time.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. You definitely remember, especially if a mistake costs you money.
That's the biggest thing is if a mistake costs you money, you'll never make it again.
Right.
And then you'll kind of figure out a way around it just so it never comes back and bites you in the ass again.
Yeah, no, 100%.
So what are some of the other stuff that you're into?
Oh, I shoot a lot of guns. Or I used to shoot a lot of guns pre-kids. I'm getting back into it. I just took a class. I'm taking another class. So I used to be pretty good competitive shooter, won a few guns, and I'd like to get a lot more back into that now that there's some kids are a little older, so I can get a little free time and actually have a hobby.
Yeah.
And then I like the process of the build and the fabricate and the create. So even if it's not work, I'm probably down in the shop, building or making something or, trying to make the rig more efficient,
Putting time and effort back into your system.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Cause it's beneficial. Everything pays off and it's something I enjoy. So there's no reason not to.
Yeah. And I've worked for companies like that in the past. They just got this big truck and everything is just throw it in the back. And it's there's a better way to do this. We shouldn't have to dig for everything every time we go from one job to the next. you can put the ladder here and hang up all the leads here. And now just throw it in the back of the truck. It's like, I'm tired of digging shit out, man. So like, on a rain day, go back to the shop and like reorganize, repack everything, and trying to get everybody into the habit of working a little bit more efficiently. It's like you don't have to fight everything all day if you just kind of organize everything and keep it where it needs to be. We can make this go a lot faster and a lot easier on our body.
That's probably the number one comment I get when I go out to jobs is how organized my truck is. They'll be like, you have so much stuff on there, but everything's so well organized and you know exactly where it is. And it helps out too. If I'm in the ditch and I do have a safety guy or a hole watch or whatever, I can be like, hey, passenger side compartment over the wheel well, I need a clamp, like run and grab that. And I know exactly where everything goes and it always returns to that spot. So I can have somebody go grab it and they're not rummaging through the entire truck trying to find me a clamp.
Mm-hmm. Now, do you have to do any like confined space or confined access stuff?
Yeah, lots.
Now, how do you manage that being a one-man crew? I mean, will they assign you somebody as part of like a recovery system or like a hole watch or anything like that?
Usually on the bigger jobs, I put that stuff on the general, so I'll go in and do the confined space, but they're responsible for all the confined space permitting, hole monitoring, everything else. Like this job that I'm doing right now with all the different shutdowns, I have to go inside the pipe and weld some stuff inside for some diffusers. And they bring out Mad Corps, which is like a confined space rescue team. They're a group of firefighters that do this stuff kind of on their off days. And I mean, it's pretty rad. I got like hardline comms. It comes to a throat mic, and I got a little speaker inside my hood. And like, I feel like kind of an astronaut. You go in there and you can sit there and talk to the guy while you're working and
just tell jokes back and forth and stuff.
Yeah, I asked him if he wants me to flex the golden pipes and start singing to him. He's like, no, let's keep the line clear.
So when you're doing that stuff, I mean, do you have to provide like, I'm going to call it a sniffer, but like for whenever you're doing confined space access, it monitors your O2 and make sure you don't have like
a four gas.
Yeah, do you have to like provide your own?
I usually have the general do that only because there is so much documentation with calibration and everything else that you have to keep up on and submit upon. And I go to so many different jobs that to try and keep up with that paperwork trail would be just like astronomical. And they usually have one on site that's calibrated, submitted on, ready for use. Everything's kosher there. So I just say, hey, you provide that. I'll clip it on, run into the pipe, or do whatever I need to do.
Mm-hmm. Now, are they when you do the confined space access and everything? Do they have systems set up to like pull out all the fumes and pump in fresh oxygen?
Yeah, a lot of times I do have blowers and stuff, so a lot of times I'll set up the actual ventilation system or at least supply some of that stuff. But yeah, I'll usually have at least one blowing and one sucking. It just depends on the actual situation.
Right. And I think that's one of the biggest things that people don't think about. And I stress it to my students. I'm not like qualified to train them in confined space entry and confined space work, but like we cover some of like the major, here's some of the things you want to consider before you jump into the hole and play, Captain Hardass. You're just going to jump in there and weld it out. These are some of the things you got to consider. We did a job over at Disney, and even though it wasn't technically, it was considered a confined space, but you wouldn't think, because we had access holes top and bottom, and it was like on the side of a concrete wall, but it was made to look like a mountain. And that was kind of like my job, was to sit up there and monitor everybody's O2 levels and to make sure everybody had enough, breathable oxygen. If the oxygen dropped too far or if CO2 got too high, you got a whistle, you get everybody out of there. And we had big fans blowing fresh air. But like a lot of them are in there using oxyacetylene. And so when you're using a torch in a confined space, you got to remember that 2/3 of the oxygen, supplying that torch its flame is coming from the ambient atmosphere around you. So that thing's breathing, 4 or 5 times heavier than you are. And if you're in a confined space, you're going to run out of oxygen like quick.
Yeah, not to mention the explosivity of the acetylene. If you got a leaky valve or something and it's pooling up in there, as soon as you strike that arc, it's lights out. Yeah. So you got to be super careful.
That, and when playing with argon, if you're in a confined space messing around with argon, you leave your torch on, that stuff's heavier than oxygen, so it's going to displace all your oxygen. You can't smell it. You can't taste it. Next thing you know, you're laying on the floor.
Yep. Yeah. Fill up your lungs and you suffocate.
Yeah. They say that it takes 2 breaths, I think it's roughly 2 breaths. Is
that what it is?
Yeah. That's what I've heard is 2 breaths.
Damn.
Like you've got literally 2 steps or 2 breaths and you're done. So,
yeah.
I mean, like confined space entry is no joke. That's not the time to be, the hero and jump in there and like, I'm going to knock this out real quick and save the day. It's like you should have an access plan. You should have a recovery plan in place, monitor the oxygen, make sure you got something pulling fumes out, bringing fresh oxygen in before you even think about getting in that hole, regardless of the size of the weld.
Yeah, things can go wrong in a hurry in a situation like that. So you definitely got to have your T's crossed and your I's dotted.
Yeah, I always give them the story. There was these guys working on a tank, and somebody left their argon on over the weekend. I guess it just kind of displaced whenever he landed on the ground. There was no oxygen at the level he was at. So the guy up top was like, "Oh shit, man! My buddy, he's down. I'm going to go in and save him." Yep. It happened 3 times before like the 4th guy was like, I'm not going in there because there's just a pile of bodies. I'm going to call somebody. Right. So, I mean, you got to think about, you got to assess the situation before you jump in there and try and save somebody too.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, there's all kinds of that stuff. And like one of the most, I guess, prominent in my mind safety courses that I went through was actually a guy from Northwest Natural Gas that came out and he talked to us. And it was a trench safety, but it applies to a lot of different things, like his deal was if you hit a gas line, it's a mandatory 911 call in Oregon now. So you got to call 911, they shut everything down and they get the gas company coming. But the story that he told was there's a dude hit a gas line, right? 1-inch poly line. He hops down in the ditch and he's got like a 7/8 bolt and a hose clamp that he's going to shove the bolt in there and then put the hose clamp on to crimp the gas line off. Well, the gas is statically charged for cathodic protection for the line, right? So he jumps in, he's breathing gas, so his lungs are filled with gas. So he goes to shove the bolt in and it accelerates the gas coming out and statically discharges, explodes. Lungs are filled with gas, blows his lungs up like he's dead. So, I mean, stuff like that happens so fast. That's
a nightmare, man.
That is a nightmare. Yeah, that would burn in my memory. I remember that one a lot.
Yeah, it's always those stories you remember and you think, like if this situation ever, pops up, I'm not going to like try and save the day,
Right. Yeah, don't be the hero in that situation.
Yeah. So what are some of the things that you do? Like, I mean, since you're a one-man operation, safety's got to be pretty high on your list because, I mean, you're like the president, CEO, and the full-time employee of the company, but you're also husband, father, and all that stuff. I mean, like, what do you do for additional training with safety? Because as they develop new processes, and I mean, you're out in the middle of the woods and stuff, are you doing like different OSHA classes and, like first responder type stuff?
I've got my OSHA HAZWOPER. I mean, and then as far as safety and like PPE, I wear my respirator all the time. I keep good hoods, all of that stuff. I mean, I'm not always like by myself. I'm usually on a job with a crew. Mm-hmm. So there's other people around, but they're not necessarily working with me in that capacity. So, the times when I'm just like out in the middle of the desert by myself is few and far between, but there's always somebody usually around at least.
Okay. And then are you doing like any like additional annual or semi-annual type training or stuff for your business?
We have to do like continuing education and stuff like that for our contractor's license. As far as like formal annual stuff, not really. I'll keep up my 40-hour. I just got my 40-hour HAZWOPER for a job, so I'll keep that up. That was way too brutal to sit through for all 40 hours to not take the 8-hour refresher course each year. Mm-hmm. Do that. Other education stuff I'd like to do. I'd really like to get my CWI here sometime soon, hopefully, if I can carve out the time to do that, sit through a seminar.
That's a hell of a process, man. But you got a good dude in your area that can definitely help you out with that, Nate.
Oh yeah, for sure.
He's good with all that stuff. He's freaking brilliant when it comes to welding. But yeah, I would highly recommend that too, because I mean, that's like another service you could provide, with your company.
Right.
And
exactly.
just once you get the education, you buy a couple of code books and you get, some measuring tools and stuff like that. You could make a killing running around, like inspecting other people's stuff.
Mm-hmm. And even just being able to do, have the letters by your name to do your own documentation and welding inspection of the stuff that you do too, I think just bodes that much further for what I'm actually doing as a company.
Right. You got to be careful with that, because you can't like inspect your own work. There's nothing, to my knowledge, there's nothing stating, and we kind of had this discussion when I went through my CWI course. You can't, there's nothing saying that you can't inspect your own work or certify yourself, but it's kind of like an ethical deal.
Yeah, I can see that for sure.
But if you got like, especially the other guys that are coming through that you're subcontracting for, you could inspect their work.
Yeah, if we needed to, for sure. Yeah. I mean, most of that stuff ends up being third party anyway, because there's usually a special inspector that's working for the general that's inspecting my stuff.
Right.
So, it's not something I'd necessarily have to worry about too often. But I think that just having that under my belt would be a good thing, especially working with engineers and stuff. They tend to definitely look at letters, and those, those ring pretty high. Yeah, ring pretty high on their list.
Yeah, I always recommend anybody that's interested in taking the CWI, if you meet the minimum requirements and you have, even somewhat of an interest in doing it, jump on it and do it, because it's a hell of an experience. And once you, like you said, once you get those letters next to your name, people tend to take you a little bit more serious. But I mean, there's a certain pride about it. But also, I think I was talking to Chloe Hudson the other day, is having that CWI, or going through that class and getting the understanding of the code books that you're supposed to be working out of and stuff, that gives you a better understanding. I think having my CWI has helped me become a better welder.
For sure. Yeah, you understand procedurally everything.
Yeah, you understand the importance of all those documents.
Why things are essential variables and why some aren't, in different situations. I mean, I'd say just in my experience doing what I do and dealing with the procedures and certs that I do have, it's definitely important to have that knowledge of the code books and what's expected of you. And, and honestly, sometimes it can save you some work too, by knowing what is and what isn't required of you.
Yeah. And then especially once you get into it, I mean, you meet a plethora of new people. So now you've got new contacts, you've built up your network. You can call on other people to, help you with your business that are CWIs, because it's I don't want to say it's a clique, but I mean, it's definitely a new club to be a member in, and just be able to talk back and forth with other inspectors and stuff to get additional information. Or if you had, with your company, I imagine you have to keep specific welding certifications, or if you needed a procedure developed, you could always reach out to somebody that and it might be a lot easier to do it that way than to hire some third party that you don't know if, they're going to be doing what's right.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've got, just working with a lot of the guys over the years, I've got quite a few welding inspector contacts that they do help me write some procedures or tune things up if I need to, or if I get something kicked back from an engineer and they're balking at something I've got on a procedure, then they can help me correct that.
Right. So do you still like volunteer at the school at all? Or do you like pop in once in a while and kind of career day or anything?
Career day, yeah, when they have that. They didn't have it last year, but I'll go down there for career day and do that when all the high schoolers come and check out everything.
Yeah.
But I'm 2 hours away from Lane right now, so to be able to drive down there and teach, and I think Bob's retired now too, so it wouldn't be as fun without him there.
Right. Now, I think that'd be kind of cool. Like if you rocked up to the school with your rig and everything and kind of like showed the students. Like I just joined up with something called Crew Collaborative, and that's kind of like it's a nonprofit organization, and basically our sole mission is to get kids inspired into getting into the trades, not specifically welding. Welding's definitely a part of it, but like plumbing, electrical, lineman work, carpentry, woodworking, anything. Welding, like I'm more biased to welding, but just showing them the different things and saying, hey, getting into a trades can be a plan A, and you can be very successful doing it.
Oh, absolutely.
If you do it the right way. You don't have to go to school and get a degree or anything like that. You can, just get really good at a trade, open up your own business if that's what you're into, or work for somebody else. But I mean, you can make a killing doing this stuff depending on work ethic and drive. And that's really at bottom line, that's what it comes down to is you're a hard worker. You want to learn a bunch of stuff and you can apply yourself.
Absolutely. Yeah. I've worked a little bit with My Work, My Future, Terry Beerworth out of Eugene. And I actually met her at one of the career days. And her whole thing was she started it because there was no exposure to trades for her son, who was in high school at the time. And he went to the same high school I went to. So I was like, yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about, because it's never presented as an option there.
That's what sucks is I don't understand why. I mean, I get it with the budgets and everything, but like they should have kept the trades programs in schools, to show kids that there's, even if you're not going to be a welder, it's still cool, or, carpentry or whatever. Maybe you're not going to go and do that the rest of your life, but it's really cool. Like once you go out and purchase your own home, to understand how to shut off the water heater and, replace that, or shut off the main line to your house, or replace a breaker, or run wiring and fix a switch, versus having to call an electrician or a plumber to come out there and do that. I wish they would bring the trades back into the schools.
Yeah, no, they've done a huge disservice to kids, telling them that like the only path to success is through a 4-year university and getting a college degree, because there's a lot of value in that for sure. Yeah. But it's not the only path to success. And you don't have to look hard to find something to prove that wrong.
Oh yeah, no, especially with today's day and age with Google. I mean, there's examples of people that are killing it every day, such as yourself, in the blue collar world, just taking that education and running with it. So I think it's something that I wish there was more of an initiative at like a federal level to put those back into the schools and come up with funding and budget items to, and like I said, I'm biased to welding, but like when I went through school, we had auto mechanics, we had the 4-H program, woodworking, drafting, and welding. I mean, those were all like right there at the high school. And then we had access to the vocational school during the day. So like if you wanted to take welding or cosmetology, or you want to be a vet tech or anything like that, you could just hop on a bus, you pick that as your electives, hop on a bus, go over to the other campus, and you can learn a full trade and get certificates before you even graduated high school. Yeah. Yeah.
No. And I think there's, I don't know. It is tragic that more of that stuff isn't presented to kids as an option. You're expected to hop out of high school at 17, 18 years old, hop into a college, take on this massive amount of debt, and pick your career all at the same time. Yeah. And then you're left holding the bag on this huge amount of debt at the end of it, and searching for a job, and with 15,000 other kids that just graduated from your same university.
Yeah. All on the same career path. And then you get a couple months or a couple years into your degree, and then you realize, well, shit, now that I'm done with this test drive, I don't like it. I want to trade it in on a newer model. So now like you go back in for, another degree, or, hope that your credits transfer into something that you're interested in. At least at high school level, you could take welding for a semester or wood shop. And if you didn't like it, screw it, pick another class next term. But
at least something else.
Yeah. At least you're not, financially bound to that decision right out of the gate,
Yeah. Yeah. No, absolutely.
Yeah. I'm hoping I'm hoping that they change a little bit, especially now with the huge skills gap that we have, and how many people are actually needed in the trades because of all like the baby boomers are retiring. I mean,
big time.
The average age of a welder right now is like 65. I mean, or I could be wrong on my facts. I didn't pull them up, but I mean, it's like 55 to 60 somewhere in there, I think. So, I mean, they're all retiring, and we don't have a massive influx of people getting into the trade. So where's all this skilled labor going to come from?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And not only that, just the knowledge base on those old timers. Like, I was super fortunate to work with some old timers once I was out of school too. John Cooper. I mean, he was an old dude that I just soaked up tons of knowledge from, and he welded. He was just doing kind of what I'm doing, like independent type stuff. And I mean, holy crap, man, you want to talk about a wealth of knowledge.
Yeah.
So that, when those guys go away, that knowledge goes with them.
Yeah. As soon as they punch out for the last time, man, it's done. That's not a resource the company has access to anymore.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think it's slowly changing. People are slowly starting to see the value in it. And I'm just hoping that it comes at a bigger level, so it's accessible across all 50 states, all the different schools, that people are going to start saying, hey, we need to do this because our infrastructure's it's crumbling right now. Everything is due for repair. All the bridges and skyways and all this stuff, buildings, everything's due for repair right now.
Yeah.
So unless we're going to start importing labor, which is something that, I could see that happening in the near future. There's other countries that are training their people for trades that could come into the U.S. and perform all the skilled labor.
Mm-hmm.
Just because there's a massive shortage in it. And I'm just hoping it doesn't come to that, and that somebody steps in that has the power, the resources, the capabilities, and does something about it.
Yeah. Nope, there's definitely a shortage out there, and there's a shortage of work ethic too, unfortunately. And that's probably one of the hardest things to train.
Yeah.
If you even can. I mean, if you're not raised with that, that's a pretty tough thing to try and push through in a class.
I have been, and I've always had the mentality that I tell people coming into the program, I talk to employers all the time and say that's the one thing I can't teach is work ethics. I don't think I've ever taught anybody work ethics. I think I've showed what work ethics looks like, and students have kind of emulated that. Because I don't take days off. I don't call in sick. I mean, unless it's mandatory for me to stay home and quarantine or something like that. I don't take days off. I don't call in sick, and it kind of shows the students. I show up early every day, staying late most of the time. I kind of show them what work ethic looks like. And I've been pleasantly surprised because I've had students in the class, that they show up late and you ride them the whole term. They're not putting in 100% effort, and then they graduate. And then within 6 months, they're in a supervisory position at a company, and they're like, hey, I kind of sandbagged it when I was in school, but I kind of see what I need to do now, and I'm stepping up to the plate, and what they're doing is paying off.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. It just takes a little longer for the light bulb to come on.
Yeah, it takes, but once that light bulb flips on, man, it's like the one kid that I didn't think was ever, I was like, he's just going to go back to working in the restaurant and, doing the same thing that he was doing before he got into school. He got set up with a job interview at this company, and the next thing you know, man, everybody else is gone. He's the only one there, but he's learning every single process, every piece of equipment. He's the number one guy over there, and he's always working and busting his ass. And I call him up periodically and say, hey, I got another student that, that has your mentality as far as work ethics now, but they're in the program, and I think they're going to be a good fit. So now I've got somebody on the outside that kind of pulls them in. So it's really cool to see the former students helping out the newer students, as they're graduating from the program, they're the ones in the hiring position, and they know that they went through the same school that they did. So they're, pretty much on track. So I think that slowly getting those people out into the workforce, I think that's going to help build things up. And then they also recruit. They're like, hey, if you want to take welding school, go down there and see Mr. Becker. He'll be able to hook you up.
Yeah,
so I'm hoping that that's kind of spreading out across everywhere, that, all the instructors are doing something similar to that. We're using their former students as kind of a network to hire their most recent graduates.
Yeah. Nope. And it's just, it's that whole snowball thing, right? Once it starts rolling, just builds up steam and builds up power.
Yeah. So Nick, before we get out of here, why don't you tell everybody where they can find you?
I am primarily on Instagram under Bezates N, and LinkedIn too, Nick Bezates. So yeah, that's pretty much it.
That's just real quick before we go. Have you seen a big return on investment as far as LinkedIn? It's a free service that everybody kind of hesitant about using.
I mean, I use it. I connect with a lot of different people in there. I think I've used it as a resource, finding local people in the area, as much as, it's put me out there for anything else. I mean, I haven't had any direct work come from it or anything like that, but I've made a lot of connections with people in the local area, machine shops and things like that. Mm-hmm. So if I need those services, I know who they are and where to go.
Okay. Yeah, I was just wondering because like I always tell people to get on LinkedIn, man. Like, because there's a lot going on LinkedIn, and like people overlook it because it's for the old people, but it's not really. I mean, you can build a pretty substantial network for your business.
Absolutely.
Whether you need a job or whether you're looking to hire somebody, it's a great place to start.
Yeah, no, I would definitely say that. I mean, I'm not looking for a job, obviously, but if I was, like, I think there's a lot of ways you could reach out to people on there and probably find one pretty easily.
Definitely. Well, Nick, thanks for your time, man. I definitely appreciate you coming on, taking the time out of your day. I know you're a busy man to come out on the podcast and share your story and stuff. So definitely appreciate it.
Absolutely, man. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
All right, everyone, that's it for this week's episode. Thanks to Nick for stopping by and sharing his journey, and thank you all for downloading the episode. You can find me on Instagram at Arc Junkies Podcast. You can swing by the merch store for Arc Junkies hats, shirts, and hoodies and support the show over at arcjunkies.com. Stay safe out there, and until next time, make every weld better than your last.